Nobody chooses a bass by accident. Every model comes with a stereotype attached, and bass players have been quietly judging each other by them for decades. Today, we're going through every single one, so you can finally find out what your bass has been saying about you behind your back. Squire P bass, affinity bass. If you play a Squire P bass or affinity bass, you are either 3 weeks into learning bass because your band lost its bassist and nobody else wanted the job, or you're secretly the most experienced person in the room. There's almost no middle ground. The beginner version is currently trying to play root notes without looking like they are defusing a bomb. The veteran version owns nicer basses at home but brings the Squire because you understand real life. Beer spills, tiny stages, questionable cables, and people walking too close to your stand do not scare you anymore. You've reached bass enlightenment. While everyone else argues about tone woods, pickup windings, and bridge saddles, you are already tuned, ready, and wondering why the guitarist is still adjusting pedals. Fender Precision Bass. Some people need 12 different sounds before they feel ready to play one note. You are not one of them. The Fender Precision Bass is the human version of a locked-in kick drum. One pickup, 2 knobs, and somehow still too much responsibility for half the band. You show up early, you bring spare strings, and you probably know where the drummer left his water bottle. Your entire musical philosophy is built around playing the right note at the right time and then not making a speech about it. You call it serving the song, which is noble, mature, and slightly suspicious because deep down you enjoy being the most dependable person in every room. You may only play 8 notes all night, but somehow the whole band falls apart without them. That is power. Boring power, but power. Also, that split coil pickup looked cooler than the jazz bass, and you know it. Fender Jazz Bass. You watched this solo on YouTube for a completely reasonable amount of time, which somehow turned into 3 hours. By the end of it, you'd already decided, yep, I'm buying a jazz bass. The Fender Jazz Bass player is what happens when a P bass player drinks coffee and learns 3 extra scales. 2 pickups gave you just enough freedom to become a little dangerous. You love slides, ghost notes, fills, and that bridge pickup bite that makes every line sound like it is quietly judging the rest of the band. You have definitely said, "It's not busy, it's melodic," to a drummer who was only asking you to calm down during the second verse. Your tone knob has seen more drama than the lead singer's relationship history, and you will explain stacked knobs to anyone trapped near you long enough to listen. Nobody asked, but that has never stopped a jazz bass player before. Rickenbacker 4003. Nobody has asked you to blend in, and thankfully you had no intention of doing it anyway. A Rickenbacker 4003 says you are not interested in being background furniture. Everyone immediately knows you have opinions before you've even plugged in. You either love odd time signatures and dramatic arrangements, or you believe the correct bass tone should sound like a chainsaw that learned music theory. Either way, your sound engineer is already nervous. You probably describe your tone as cutting through the mix, while everyone else describes it as please turn down. You also know exactly how many truss rods your bass has, and somehow that fact comes up more often than it should. But that's the whole point. Nobody buys a Rickenbacker because they want to politely blend in behind the keyboard player. You brought the bass because subtle has never been your favorite setting. Oh, and you secretly love Paul McCartney, don't we all? Höfner violin bass. Okay, you definitely love Paul McCartney. You know the difference between a Hofner Icon, Contemporary, and 501, and you can identify each one just by looking at the control panel. If you play a Höfner violin bass, the 1960s never really ended for you. You like warm, woody, thumpy bass tones that sound like old photographs and black suits under stage lights. Your flat-wound strings may have been on that bass since a completely different political era, but somehow that is part of the charm. Someone eventually asks, when was the last time you changed those strings? And you look at them like they just suggested repainting the Mona Lisa. You're not trying to sound modern, aggressive, or technical. You want every note to feel like it belongs on an old record. And honestly, you get slightly offended when somebody suggests brighter strings. Man Stingray. You love Flea. Subtlety has never been your strongest quality, and the Man Stingray isn't helping. You do not just play bass, you attack it with confidence. You slap during soundtrack. You slap between songs. And if the pastor, producer, or band leader looks away for 3 seconds, you are already thinking, this verse could use a little slap. Your gig bag has enough spare 9-volt batteries to survive a small blackout because forgetting one is a mistake you only make once. Your EQ is probably boosted in ways that would concern a studio engineer, but you are not here to disappear into the mix. You're here to make the bass line arrive wearing sunglasses, chewing gum, and asking where the funk section is. Somewhere, a sound engineer just watched you reach for the bass knob and quietly close their eyes. Fodera Emperor. Your accountant knows exactly how much your bass cost, and he's secretly judging. Some bassists say you love music. A Fodera Emperor quietly suggests your career is going very, very well. You have either spent years saving for this bass, landed enough session work to justify it, or casually walked into a store and made everyone else uncomfortable. Somewhere in your house is a collection of basses that would make a small music shop jealous. Yet, you still insist each one has a completely different purpose. You probably use words like Buckeye Burl, Master Grade, and custom options in everyday conversation without realizing how expensive you sound. You also have a suspicious number of photos of your bass on your phone. Not gigs, just the bass. And honestly, after spending that much on a Fodera, you've earned the right to admire it every now and then. Ibanez SR sound gear. The Ibanez SR player values speed, comfort, and the ability to play lines that make guitarists nervous. You probably picked it up once and immediately thought, wait, basses are allowed to feel this comfortable? There's a strong chance you've watched more taping videos than television this month. And if you somehow find yourself above the 12th fret, even when the song absolutely does not require it, your fills are technically impressive, even when nobody asked for them. The neck is so slim that every other bass now feels like it was carved with a shovel. Deep down, you enjoy watching somebody else pick it up. Smile for 3 seconds, then accidentally play faster than they intended. Warwick Thumb. Owning a Warwick comes with one unexpected hobby: explaining exotic tone woods to people who never asked. Ovankol, Wenge, and Bubinga somehow find their way into everyday conversation. Your bass probably costs more than your current transportation situation, and somehow weighs enough to qualify as strength training. You love that deep, nasty mid-range growl that makes drummers sit up straighter and guitarists pretend they are not intimidated. They are. You complain about back pain every single loadout, but selling it has never been a serious option, because the moment you plug in, all suffering suddenly feels worth it. This is not just a bass, it's furniture with pickups and emotional damage. Spectre NS series. A Spectre NS player has taste, and unfortunately they know it. You probably spent longer researching this bass than some people spent choosing a university. Every review mattered, every demo was compared, and every comment section somehow became research. Standing up, the bass feels balanced and powerful. Sitting down, it becomes a negotiation. But you will never admit that because it looks too good to criticize. You care about tone, image, and stage presence in exactly the right proportions. You may not be the loudest person in the band, but your bass has already introduced itself before you've even played the first note. Quiet confidence looks expensive, and somehow so does your instrument. Fretless bass. Mention fretless bass in a room full of bass players and someone will say Jayco before you've even finished the sentence. You either sound like butter melting on a warm piano, or you are committing emotional damage against every ear in the room. There is no safe middle. You've definitely used the phrase singing tone in a serious conversation. And there's an excellent chance you've mentioned Jayco before anyone asked who inspired you. Every note is an exercise in trust because frets are for people who enjoy certainty. When fretless is played well, it feels deep, smooth, and almost human. When played badly, everyone suddenly develops enormous respect for little metal strips. You call it expression. Everyone else quietly reaches for the tuner, just in case. Oh, and you've definitely watched Remco's Groove Lab thinking, I can play that. 3 notes later, you're just nodding along and appreciating the groove instead. Sadowsky. You've definitely watched at least one NYC gospel bass video and immediately searched for the bass in the description. Some people modify their jazz bass. You skipped all that and bought the version everyone was trying to turn theirs into. You appreciate clean craftsmanship, ridiculously low action, and an onboard preamp that somehow makes everything sound expensive without sounding overprocessed. You probably play with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where every note belongs, and you've convinced yourself that popping in just one tasteful gospel fill doesn't count as showing off. Somewhere in your browser history is a comparison between a Sadowsky Metro line and a German-built model, and yes, you watched the entire thing. You don't just like a good bass, you like a bass that quietly tells everyone you've done your homework.